in various ways. One of the things I really like about C Sharp is the ability to override or overload, sorry, methods. So we can actually have 3 different methods here, all called spawn, that all return a game object, but they take different parameters. So you can spawn a game object with just a prefab path, which is just the location in our prefab hierarchy where that object exists. And you can also spawn it at a specific X and Y location on the map, and then it'll basically call the same, the root spawn, and then it will set the position accordingly. And then you can also spawn it just by using another game object as a parent. So this would be useful in the case of, say, a projectile or a monster that drops loot or something like that. All right. So yeah, that's that. The nice thing about that is that it also has this method called destroy all. So whenever a entity gets spawned, it gets added to this list of objects, and then we can clean them all up at the end of a level or whatever. So that's that. And then our previous code just uses that to spawn stuff. So we have game object manager. So on unload level, destroys all. And then when it's creating a level, it also uses that. I don't love this syntax, having to call game object manager.instance.spawn. So who knows, that might change at some point in the future. But for now, this is a way to avoid the bugs, which is good. The other thing I've been working on is lighting. And so let's give you a quick glance at what that looks like so far. We have these entities in the game, these lamps that project light, and we also have this cauldron that projects light. And I've been playing with how the light gets, how the sprites get lit. And there's a couple ways to do it. And one thing I've been working on is normal mapping. And so I'll kind of show you the difference if you're not familiar with it. But basically, it's a material on the sprite that determines how it gets lit. And so by default, no lighting. That looks kind of weird, huh? Let's go to, we don't want none, we want sprites default. So with the default sprite material, you won't get any lighting. So you can see that Raga is kind of lit the exact same way. There's no lighting on him no matter how close or far he is from a light source. So he always looks the same. The next step is to change that material to a material that has the sprite's diffuse property. And now you can see that when Raga is close to a light source, he gets lit more nicely. So when he's in a dark area, he's a little dark. And then when he goes into this kind of orangey area, he kind of has like an orangey yellowish glow. And then when he goes over here near this cauldron with a green light, he's kind of got some green tinting to him. That looks okay. And that's kind of how the lights worked in Wizard's Lizard 1. It wasn't based in Unity, so it was all HTML5. So the methodologies were a little different, but the basic idea was the same, is that you have this overlay of light that affects sprites under it. However, we can do a little bit nicer stuff in Unity using normal mapping. And so I've created this Raga material that basically uses normal mapping in order to cast light on the sprite in a more realistic way. So now you can kind of see that when he's on the, he's on the right side of the light, his right half is kind of shadowed. And then when he's, right in front of it, his face is kind of lit up green, but kind of the back of him is a little bit more shaded. And so as you move around these light sources, you can see that different parts of his body are shaded. And the same thing is true for the orange lights over here. And then, it's complete darkness in this hallway. And then when he comes up to the top, he's got the orangey yellow glow. He's actually pretty much well lit from all angles right here, just because there's 4 lights in close proximity in this room. You can kind of see how that works. So the way that I generate these normal maps is by using a program called Sprite Delight, which is some beta software. It's written by this guy named Dennis Foz, and what it does is it basically takes a sprite that you've created and it generates normal maps, depth maps, occlusion, and specular highlights for that sprite, and without you having to do anything else. And it's a pretty cool tool, and you can also change some of the settings about how the normal maps get generated. But basically, it's fairly automatic, which is kind of cool. It is in beta though, so it has some bugs. But it's actually been working pretty well for me. So you can see if we go into our images folder, sprites. So we generated this normal map for Raga. And for this particular one, I kind of just kept the detail pretty low, so you can kind of see that there's not a whole lot of detail on Raga himself, like with the horns and the tongue and stuff like that, and the eyes. But as I play with this, hopefully it'll get more detailed. But the basic idea is that you have this outline of the sprite, and so it's kind of rounded, and when the light plays off of it, you can kind of get the feeling of it being a 3D effect. So this is something that's pretty new to me, but I found it to be pretty interesting, and I'm really happy with the results so far. I really like the way that the shading looks. Oh, whoops. I have to go back and apply that material. One thing that's interesting about Unity is that when you make changes during runtime, all those changes will be reverted. So remember when I was in here messing with Raga, I can do all kinds of stuff, like I can scale him up to 2 on the y-axis and then 5, make him really wide. Oh, now he can't go anywhere. Giant Raga. Anyways, but as soon as I stop playing and play again, he'll kind of go back to his default setting. So any changes you make while the game is running, don't stick around. All right, let's check in on chat. All right, so today I'm probably going to be messing around with a few different things. Probably going to be working on a little bit of level creation, and one thing I might start with is fading in and out of a level name as we transition levels. This is something I like to do just because it's kind of fun to name your areas and give the player a sense of where they are in the world. And so what I've done previously is I created this game object, which is just a piece of text called level name, and it's just an overlay in the canvas. The way that Unity UI elements work is that they all have to be contained in this canvas holder, basically, and the canvas holder has ways of kind of being stretched over the screen, but the basic idea is that the canvas just kind of follows the screen. So you can see that we have our health bar up here on the left, and then the level name, and so these elements are kind of persistent across the screen, no matter where the camera is at. They're independent of the camera, I guess, is a better way to put it. And we also have this color overlay that's black, and that's what we use to kind of fade the game in and out. So when the game starts, you see that it fades in and stuff like that. So let's see what we can do with the level name. I'm probably going to use, so there's a couple ways to do the animation effects. When I first wrote this color overlay stuff, I used just what are they called? Coroutines in order to get the fading. So basically, what happens is that when you call fade in or fade out on this object, it calls this coroutine, which is really just a function that returns or yields every so often. So if you're not familiar with coroutines, they're kind of like a function that executes once a frame, or every frame, but it can yield during its execution back to the main thread, I guess. So in this particular case, we have a while loop that changes the opacity of the overlay from either fully opaque to fully transparent, or vice versa. And in this while loop, all it does is it just says go from fully transparent to opaque. But each time in the while loop, it does a yield, and so the next, this will yield until the next frame. And so what happens is that the alpha changes based on the delta time between frames. So that's one way to do it. But that does require a little bit of more manual work. You see I had to write all this kind of fading code myself. The other way to do it is with tweening libraries. And so there's a pretty cool tweening library that I've started using called Lean Tween. And it's just kind of a small bare bones utility for tweening properties of game objects in Unity. And so one of the things I'm using it for right now is some kind of game object effects. So if something appears into the world, we have this routine called Squishy Appear, and basically what it does is it scales the game object, kind of gives it a little bouncy juiciness when it spawns into the game world. And so we use Lean Tween for that. And then also when a game object disappears, we tween the alpha and the scale of the object. So maybe we can see that. Let's get this out of here for now. Okay, so I don't have anything spawned in the world yet. So let's go back to our, level data, and let's put some stuff in here. We have these apples I made earlier, items apple. So let's see. Oh, guess not. Let's see. Oh, I guess I didn't make them. Maybe I thought I did, but I forgot. That happens sometimes. In which case, we will just go ahead and make them real quick. Let's see. So let's go back to their game, and we're just going to create an empty game object, not underneath the camera. And we'll drag it over here, and then we'll give it a sprite renderer. And then we'll pick, we have an apple in here somewhere. Oh, I think I missed it. There it is. And we have various sorting layers, which I don't know if I talked about last time, but basically to control how things are rendered visibly on the screen. And so I have a couple different ones here: flat objects and tall objects, and then floor. Flat objects would be things like rugs or spider webs on the floor, things like that. And then tall objects are basically anything else that has some height to it. And then those all get sorted within that same group. Anyways, so we have this game object, which is an apple, and then we'll just rename it to apple. And another thing I think I talked about last time is a sprite depth component, which kind of updates the order and layer variable right here for the sorting layer based on the object's Y. And so in our kind of 3/4 overhead game system, it sorts things how you'd expect to see them visually. The other thing we're going to do is we have this collectible script, which basically allows us to pick things up and store it as the player. And so this is an apple, and there's one of them. And then we also need to give it a circle collider, or really any kind of collider, actually. And then we can just kind of move that around until we like where it is. That's good for now. And then all of the colliders need to be triggers for our purposes, because we don't want the player to collide with them as if they were solid. We want them to be able to pass through them, but we also want the collision to trigger a response in the scripting system. So we're going to do that. And then I guess let's... I guess I thought I had done this last night or yesterday, but I created another folder for collectible items. And so we're going to take the apple, we're going to drag it in there. And then we'll get rid of it here in the main hierarchy. And now that it's in resources, prefabs, items, apple, this should actually work and not cause an error. So let's find out. Yes, there it is. All right. So now you see, so that kind of zoom out effect where the apple gets bigger and then fades out, that is using lean tween. And so we can go by pick up all these apples. Can't do anything with them yet because that part of the code doesn't exist quite yet. But there you go. That was kind of a tangent. I was talking about tweening UI elements, but I started just giving you examples of how we're using tweening other places in the game. Let's see. So let's figure out how to tween this level name in and out. One thing that's kind of interesting in Unity is about how to reference various objects. So one way that I've been doing it, which is easy but I don't necessarily love, is by creating references to the objects that I want to manipulate in kind of like a higher level management script. So for example, I have this class here called tilemapTest, which is really just a controller for the level. And it has references to like the overlay, which is how it uses to fade in and out, and the camera and the player, and then some background music and stuff like that. For this particular use case, we're going to create another public game object called level name. And then in the Unity editor, we're just going to go over here. And, well, first we're going to pin that thing, and then we'll take level name and we'll drop it right here. So now that we can reference that from, oops, I don't want to do that. Now we can reference it from the level controller. Again, there might be better ways to organize this stuff, and I'm sure that my opinion on that will change over time, but that's the way that we're doing it right now, just for simplicity. So let's see what we can do here. So load level. So we start to fade in. We enable the player on fade out complete. So this is where we start fading in the level. So this is where we could also start fading in the title text. Although what we might want to do first is just make sure that it is completely opaque, which I'm not exactly sure how to do that with the text. because these things don't really have a alpha property that I'm aware of. So what we're going to do first is just check out Unity text opacity and see what we can come up with real quick. Modifying the opacity of a text element. I guess you have to update the style. I know that a lot of stuff changed with later versions of Unity with respect to text. Let's see if lean tween Unity text opacity. Sometimes it'll just work. So let's just take a quick look. I see. So this looks like it'll fade in a GUI object. So I wonder if that'll just work. Let's try between dot alpha, and we want to use the level name, and we want to go from, let's go to let's say 0 over, say 2 seconds, just for testing purposes. So this will actually fade out as the game is fading in, hopefully. I guess we'll find out. Nope. Not at all. Not even a little bit. Maybe we have to use the rect transform. I wonder if that's how that works. I'm a little new to some of this stuff. Nope, that's not it. Maybe rect. Nope. So it says that this, it takes an LT rect. Oh, maybe that's so. We have to create a lean tween rect first. Because it says it takes an LT rect. Uh-huh. So it looks like you have to create this lean tween rectangle first. That seems rather confusing. Maybe we'll pass on that for the time being. I thought it would be a little more straightforward. Because I don't know what these parameters would be when you're creating the rectangle. So it's kind of weird. Let's check in on chat real quick. Oh, all kinds of stuff. So it looks like someone has some suggestions for the tweening. You can add a canvas group. To tween. Yeah, I'm only reading the chat every once in a while. So canvas group. Interesting. So would a canvas group just be another canvas inside of here? So like I could do that. And then I could scale this whole thing or fade this whole thing. Let's try that. Let's say level name group just for we'll go in and we'll change that reference to this maybe. Yeah. I clearly don't understand the Unity UI stuff very well at this point. Oh, it's a component added to the text object. Okay. Let's see. So we'll pop that out of there. Oh, I see. So the canvas group has an alpha. Gotcha. Now the question is, does Lean Tween know how to interact with that? I guess we'll find out. Let's see if it does, just by default. It probably won't, though, I'm guessing. Yeah, no. Interesting. Yeah, that does seem pretty handy. I think, though, that maybe the issue right now is that Lean Tween doesn't seem to respect that. So let's see. Lean Tween canvas group alpha. Let's see what the internet says. So it looks like we can probably just use the generic Lean Tween value tweener. But it seems like that's the manual way to do it. I don't know if that's exactly what we want. Nice. I might have to check out Do Tween. It was definitely one of the ones I was looking at when I was playing around with these tweening libraries, so I'll have to check it out. I think that Lean Tween might support what we want, but I'm not exactly sure how straightforward that is right now. So let's maybe just move on to something else for the moment. I can get into Do Tween and stuff some other time where I have time to figure it out and see what's what. But for now, let's go back to building some levels maybe. I think last time we stopped, we were working on some garden levels that we were chaining together with warp points and populating with monster spawners and items and various other things. And again, we're using sprite tile for our tiling needs. Trying to remember where all my stuff is now. So I think one thing I wanted to do was come in here and add some more collectibles into this map. So we're going to create another section or another trigger for these things. Let's call it 7. And let's make these the apples that we were working on earlier. And then we'll go through and we will add some triggers for these things so that they show up in our level. I'm just going to put them around various places in the room or in the rooms for now. We've already got some monsters and some mushrooms and some other things in these rooms. So we're just adding a little bit more stuff. One thing I wanted to play with was maybe adding some goals with regards to picking up items in the game. So let's save that, and then we'll open up secondary one. So we have these 2 different maps that can both be used. So we're going to add these spawn locations to both of them. Just going to put these 7s all over the map where we want the collectibles to spawn. All right, so we got that. And then we actually have 2 different garden maps. We want to add the apples to both. Probably. Okay, so let's run that. Or Unity will crash. That's always nice. All right, so let's see if it'll work this time. Because I was asking Unity to do too much. Oops. It needs to be garden 1, not just garden. Oh, so you can see that this is a map I created before I was working on the lighting stuff. So there are no lights in this map, but Raga is still using a material that needs lighting, and so he's not lit. So we can go fix that. Couple things. One is that we probably want our tiles to be affected by lighting as well. And so we can go in here and all of these tiles we can select and just say pixel lighting. and then that will tell sprite tile that these tiles need to use a material that will be affected by lighting. So now you can see these are all dark. And again, the tile set here has some seams because the tiles are too close together. And I haven't fixed that yet because I'm kind of lazy. And this is mostly just testing tile sets anyway. Oh no, it screwed up our collision map. That tends to happen sometimes. So for some reason, when you do batch alterations of stuff in sprite tile, sometimes the settings will get overridden. So what happened is I checked pixel lighting on everything, but then it took away the collision property on all these tiles. So that's not good. I think though that our map still has all the collision data, yeah. So it looks fine. We just need to go in there and reset that collision parameter on the collidable tiles. Yay, we have collision again. Okay, that's good. So the next thing we probably want to do is we probably want to go back and add some lights to this new area, which means we need to go back into sprite tile, and let's start with just one map. So let's get rid of this alternate version, and we'll open up Garden A. And maybe we'll use those 7s for the lights instead. I'll put lights in the corners of these rooms. Which we already did for most of these rooms. 7, 7, 7s. Yep, that's good. Okay, so, and then back in our level data over here, we'll just change this to, I think it's props lamp. Yes, props lamp. There we go. So now we have some lighting. Looks a little better. And you can see the effect on Raga. And also the lighting on the world. And we still have some dark areas that aren't lit quite as well. It looks kind of weird with these these lamps in an outdoor map, but you know, it's all just testing for right now. The other thing we probably want to do is give some of these other entities some lighting. So let's go in here, let's see, objects, block, and the simplest way to do it is just to change their material to what we've called this lit material, sprites lit. And all that looks like is just a sprites diffuse material. So now the blocks have a little bit of lighting to them. Although these things would really benefit from the normal mapping as well. But that'll probably be another task. The normal mapping stuff that I use is still in beta, Sprite Delight. Pretty useful, but there are some bugs, so I don't want to fight with the bugs on live stream. Just because that probably wouldn't be super interesting for everybody. Let's see, what else? The monsters, we can also give them the right material. And also these things. And I think the mushrooms as well. There we go. So you can kind of see that these lights have like this kind of yellowy orangey light, and so it kind of puts that yellowy orangey tint on everything in here. And we can change that if we wanted to be some different kind of lighting. Oh, I guess the scrolls still don't have the right lighting. But we can kill things with the fireball, so that's always fun. Anyways, so I think we're going to add another... Maybe we'll take these mushrooms out for now and make these into the apples. And maybe I'll also take the, well, I'll leave those in for now. So now we have something to go around and collect besides the scrolls, which are useful for killing things. Oh, we can still kick our fireballs around because why not? It's kind of fun. And then theoretically, just like last time, there's an exit somewhere. There it is, to the next level. Oh, and this level doesn't have any lights because we haven't defined them yet, so it's all dark. So we can go do that real quick. I think what we did last time is we just changed this. We're going to repurpose these, what we once had as apple spawners for lights. And then we can just change this to Garden 2. So the basic idea here is that we're creating, you know, kind of a sequence of dungeons. You know, this kind of gardeny forest area might have multiple levels to it, and so those can be strung together with warp zones. So now this has light as well, which is pretty cool. And let's check in on chat. Who has the Half-Life 3 installed? The green icon. Oh no, that's actually not Half-Life. This is a terminal emulator for Windows, which allows me to do like Git command line stuff and, you know, LS and that kind of stuff. Because I come from OS X, where that is an important part of my workflow, and miss it in Windows. And this Commander program is actually a pretty decent replacement for that, but still not exactly what I want. So one thing I wanted to do was to kind of create a complete flow, you know, starting in one zone and then coming all the way back to the beginning again. So one thing I want to do is I want to create a warp zone to our dungeon, quote unquote, from the main level. So we're going to open up that. This is actually some artwork that Matt has been working on. It's obviously a work in progress, but the main idea is that we're using a little bit different perspective just to test it out. In AWL, we had this perspective where it was kind of like Legend of Zelda rooms, you know, where you could be looking down straight into the room and you could see the walls kind of at every angle. In this test, we're going for more of a like Final Fantasy style perspective where, you know, you can see the, I guess this would be the south-facing walls. And they're like, the walls are 2 or 3 tiles high, kind of giving a better perspective of depth. But that's pretty interesting. So I think what we're going to do in here is, I guess let's take number 7. We're going to change this trigger to number 7. And, save that first. And we have some special syntax for warp zones because they need a little bit more setup in terms of spawning our level, because we need to hook some events like when the player interacts with them. We have to respond to that. So I'm just going to delete some of these things. Some of this extra information. So we're going to use trigger number 7 for that, and we're going to warp to garden level 1, and we're going to use the warp prefab that we built already, which looks like a sewer manhole for the time being, but at some point it'll probably be something different. And so we'll go back to the house. Oh, there we go. Got all these apples all over the place. And we can warp to there. So I think what we want to do is on the last level we want to create a warp zone and it'll warp back to the first part. So I think what we're going to do is the way I set this up is I allowed the data to specify a trigger that you can use for like returning to a zone. So maybe I can explain that in more detail. I'll put an 8 trigger right here. So the 7 trigger is the actual warp zone, and then the 8 trigger is going to be kind of like a return point from a different zone. So by default in this map, things are going to spawn at the number 1 trigger. And so the way that I've set up our data, there's a variable here called player spawn trigger, which tells the level generator where to spawn the player in the map in the absence of anything else. And so we can override that from different maps though, because if you're coming back from another map, you might want to warp into an area that's not the quote-unquote start. So let's see, trigger 5 is the warp here, trigger 5. So basically we'll just uncomment out this, and this is going to be an 8. And so we're going to warp back to the house map, and we're going to spawn the player at number 8. And then that should just work. We'll find out though. Let's see. Let's see if it actually works, or if there's all kinds of bugs, which is usually the case because, nothing ever goes the way it's supposed to. So we're moving around in the house. We'll go into the first area of the forest / garden / whatever. We'll dodge these enemies. And we'll see if we can't find the warp zone. Should be somewhere in this map. But exploring is half the fun, right? It's the name of the game. Look for things. So now we're in the second forest level. Oh, there's the exit. So now, oh great, we're back in the house. Excellent. So another thing we can do is we can make it so you can come back. You can warp back and forth pretty quickly. Maybe you don't have to go all the way through. So let's go into Garden A. And so we warp in here. Maybe we want to change that So we'll put the 1 right there. And then let's make I guess we'll call that number 8. Change this to number 8. And we'll put another warp. Let's turn off word wrap here. So we're putting another warp on trigger number 8, which is going to warp us back to the house. And it's going to look the same. And then the spawn player trigger, I think, is also going to be 8. But let's just verify that's the case. So in house, yes, 8. Okay, great. So let's just see if that works. It might. So we can go to the garden area, and here we are, and then we can just immediately exit back to the house. So that's kind of fun. This is, obviously just a lot of kind of testing stuff right now, just kind of getting the flow of the levels down, being able to go from one area to the next, being able to have items, monsters and stuff that spawn in the various zones. So let's use Commander real quick to check that stuff in. I feel like I lost some work yesterday. I remember making those apples earlier, and I don't know what happened to them. So let's see. Connect house to garden and back. And again, we're not super concerned with commit messages right now because this is just kind of a playground project. Trying to figure out Unity and see how we might make some kind of action RPG-ish overhead games. And we'll check in on chat again. Yes. I promise that my commits are a lot more granular when I care. But, for this, it's just kind of messing around. So, some of this stuff might make it into an actual game at some point, but some of it might not. So, I don't care. I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break, and I will be back in a minute. All right, that was probably faster than 5 minutes, but that's okay. I also wanted to apologize for last week's stream. I made the mistake of trying to put some background music in the beginning, and I was just playing Pandora, and apparently Twitch didn't like that because it's copyright infringement, and so they muted the first half of the stream basically, and I wasn't able to export it to YouTube, but hopefully this week's stream will just export nicely. Yep, no second screen, so you're seeing everything. So, and I'm also getting a little horsey, as per usual. Okay. Yes, the game needs more fireballs. I think that we're going to rename this project to be called Fireball Soccer, and we'll make a whole game out of that. Oh no, OBS to infinity window. Let's get that out of there. Okay, maybe we will add some more hazardous things to the world, or maybe we'll try and fix the soccer ball fireball collision. Because theoretically, we don't actually want these fireballs colliding with the world or with the player. As fun as it is. So the hazard portion already doesn't collide with the player, but this part does. So maybe we need to make another layer for that. Maybe we'll call it projectiles. And then we'll give that to this. No. So we just want the top level object. This is kind of an interesting use case here. Because we want to very, discreetly control the collision of these objects, the fireball actually has a sub-object, which is the hazardous part. And so that hazardous part is on a layer called player hazards, which are hazards that will collide with monsters but not with the players. And then it has the hazardous component that we created that will do damage and destroy itself on collision and stuff like that. And so, but the actual fireball also has, a collider and a rigid body and all that stuff. And it, we want it to collide with walls, but not necessarily with the player or other things like that. Although we do want the hazardous part to collide with monsters. So that really should be all we need to do to make that work. Although I think we do need to go in here into project settings, physics 2D, and here's this nice little matrix where we can control what collides with what. So we don't want projectiles to collide with the player, the warp zones, monsters, monster hazards, really nothing. We just want it to collide with the fault, which is, kind of the world. Although I've been thinking about perhaps putting the solid objects into their own own collision layer. So like things like the block. We can call it solids or something, but right now they're all default. So theoretically, if we test this out, go back into our garden map. That was kind of weird. Oops. I accidentally exited. So we screwed up something with our fade in script there, but not really sure. So let's see. Now, if I shoot this fireball, it still collides with monsters. Well, I think I'm out of fireball scrolls. I'm going to have to go find another one. There's one. So before, when we shot things down, they would collide with the player immediately, and that's why they would kind of stop in the middle of the arena, because they were colliding with the player, because the player was considered a solid for those purposes. So now that looks like it's fixed. Although I'm a little sad to see Fireball Soccer go. So, we can no longer kick fireballs around, unfortunately. Also, the fireballs have this property called, or the rigid bodies have a property called fixed angle, which we may want to check for now, just because we kind of don't want them to be rotating and flying all over the place necessarily. It's one of the interesting things about using Unity's physics engine is that there's a lot of portions of it that do things that we don't necessarily want right off the bat. We also would kind of like the fireballs to be destroyed when they hit a wall. And I think that we already have some similar behavior with the slime. I think it's a behavior called bounce. So it says on collision enter 2D. So when this thing collides with, say, a wall, it will just switch direction. However, for the fireball, that's not really what we want. It has this destroy and collide, but the problem here is that the hazardous component on the child of the fireball, which would be this thing right here, it doesn't collide with the world. It's just a trigger collider that only collides with monsters to do damage to them. And it will remove itself when it does damage, but you can see, when we shoot fireballs into the world and they don't hit a monster, they just kind of hang out along the walls, which is not exactly what we'd expect, right? You kind of want to... Oh, also they don't seem to Z-sort correctly, so I think what we need to do is we need to add our sprite depth component here. Let's see if that fixes that. Don't know why that slime just did that. That was kind of weird. I guess it's the tree trunks actually that are causing it to veer off course. So maybe let's do this. There we go. Now it's sorted correctly behind the lamp, which is what we want. The other thing is that we want to probably destroy it when it hits the wall. So I think what I'm going to do for now, in the absence of a better idea, is I'm going to create a script called, let's call it fragile. And really all we're going to do is we're just going to nuke this stuff right here. And then we're going to say public void on collision enter 2D. Oops. Collision 2D. And we really don't care necessarily the direction of the collision right now. I think that maybe in the future, and something that we did in AWL was that we looked at the angle of the collision to decide if something should kind of like slide along a wall or if it should just be destroyed. Because if something hits the wall head on, it should be destroyed. But you don't necessarily always want something that just kind of clipped the edge of the wall to be destroyed. So that's probably something we'll do at a later date. But for now, we're just going to destroy the game object whenever it hits a wall. And we will go back into our fireball and we'll give it this fragile component. And we'll see if that works. Yep. Awesome. So, does the let's see if the fireball collides with similar stuff in the world. Like blocks, for example. Nice. It also moves the blocks. And the blocks can also move the slimes. What if we can like trap this guy in between? Nope. That was kind of weird. I don't think I hit that warp zone, but the game certainly thought I did. Maybe if I push a block into a warp zone, maybe that's a bug. Or it thinks that I'm going to warp. So that's working a little better. The other thing that would be nice, let's see. Let's check on chat real quick. Someone is asking, why not put a timeout on collision detect to destroy the fire? Or add what you were about to do to the scripts you already have attached. I could. The scripts I already have attached, though, there aren't really... So if you look at the fireball here, there really weren't any scripts that would make sense for that. I mean, the fireball itself has transform, sprite renderer, circle collider, and rigid body, which are all kind of built-in Unity components. The only custom script on the fireball itself is just the sprite depth sorter, which, dealing with removing the fireball from the world is not the right place because the sprite depth component really is just about updating the sorting order to change the visual display so that everything sorts on the screen correctly. I'm, in general, a fan of smaller, more focused components. Theoretically, this fragile script is something that could be combined with other stuff. I mean, it kind of depends what makes sense, but the problem right now is that the collision stuff for the hazard actually exists on a different game object. It's a child of the fireball, right? But it's a separate game object. And so I don't think, because of the settings, right, because this game object has a circle collider that is a trigger, and it has this hazard script, it's not going to receive this on collision enter 2D event because that game object, this hazard sub game object, is not receiving the collision events. It's actually this one right here. So that's just the reason that it's a separate script for now, the fragile script. It's not to say that it can't be combined with something else in the future, but again, I tend towards more specific components than adding it to something else and kind of overloading it, perhaps. And as far as the timeout, sure, the timeout is something that I'll probably add at some point, or more likely it'll be like a, you know, some kind of effect, right? So instead of like, we could actually just call this zoom disappear. So we could say effects dot zoom disappear game object instead. Oops. And then that'll give us a little bit nicer effect. I'm not sure why the fade in, fade out thing is it's going kind of wonky, but whoa. So I hit the wall a little too early. So let's try again. Wait for these slimes to get out of my way. Yeah. So you gotta see that it's a little weird because it kind of like bounces off the wall. So that's probably something we could do to make that look a little nicer too. For example, we could, stop the collision and the velocity and stuff like that. I think part of the problem is that it's scaling up, and the scaling up also affects the collision. So what we could do is we could turn on is kinematic. That'll be a kind of quick and dirty way to kind of take it out of collision. So I think there's a property for that. Unity kinematic. I wonder if we can access the rigid body by default. Let's see. Sometimes you have to, sometimes you can reference things just, they're like already attached to the game object, like transform. I don't know if this one necessarily is. We can try it though. We can say rigid body dot is kinematic is equal to true. Oops. Apparently it uses obsolete APIs, so we'll just do this the old-fashioned way, or maybe this is the preferred way. I don't know. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a reference, rigid body 2D. We'll call it body, and then we'll say body is equal to get component rigid body 2D, and then we'll just say body dot is kinematic is equal to true, and maybe this will work. There's no errors at least, so it's a good start. So we'll grab a scroll here, and then we'll fire it at the, there we go. Seemed like it kind of did what we wanted, although it collided a little too early. So it's, there we go. And we can also do the same thing in the hazard. So instead of, let's see. So maybe we want to do this game object, call it object, and we'll say equals parent is not equal to null, then it's going to be parent. Otherwise, it's going to be game object. And then we'll say effects dot zoom disappear object. And so now it should also have that nice little animation when it hits an enemy as well. Or I missed. It's hard to aim these fireballs. It was a lot easier when I could kick them into the slimes. There we go. Although we have an error. Transform. Still trying to access it. Seems like Lean Tween's trying to tween something that then was destroyed. So I don't really know what that was. Interesting. I'm guessing because it was hitting maybe because it was hitting two things. Anyways, that's kind of how we would go about that. Obviously, you know, we would want to clean that up a lot so that we don't get errors. So we're going to comment that out just for a moment. We might want a more, you know, streamlined way of saying, you know, this thing hit either an enemy or a wall, and so I want it to kind of disappear with whatever polish or animation, what have you, and then have those cases kind of be handled similarly. Also, it kind of feels like we want to make sure that it can't do both. You know, like if it hits an enemy and then it also hits a wall, we don't want it to kind of try and double fade out, because that's probably where some of that issue is coming from. For some reason, we also have this weird fading issue. I'm not really sure where that's coming from at the moment. Seemed like that was working just fine before. I don't know what we did to mess that up, but I'm sure it was something that I did. Well, it seems to work fine there. I wonder why. Is it just with these other maps? Seems to look okay there too. Oops. Is it just this one? It is. Okay. I wonder why that is. That's kind of strange. Wonder what would cause that one specific map. Oh, this is not very nice. Have these spikes right in the way of the stuff I want to collect. That's not cool. Oh no. There's also a lamp right in the way of... See, I didn't really do a great job of placement on this map, apparently. I guess that's the danger of, you know, kind of just putting down triggers willy-nilly. I'm really digging the normal map lighting, though. I think it's something that I'm going to play around with a lot more. One thing I actually tried, but didn't end up looking that great, was doing normal mapping for the tiles themselves. I don't know if I still have those images around. Let's see. Oh, I do. Okay, so This is kind of interesting. So let's put the tile material. Let's see. Gonna create a new material for the tile set. And we're gonna set this to, I think opaque should be okay for now. And then we will pick the normal map of the tile set normals that we generated with Sprite Delight. And then Sprite Tile has a specific API call you have to make. You have to basically say tile.setTileMaterial, and that will allow you to use your custom material for the tiles. Oh, we gotta go back to the other one. Because I didn't generate normals for the other ones. Oops. Still didn't work. Oh, I have to select the material here. Right. So there's our tile set material. And you can see it kind of does what we want. It has a really interesting effect. Makes the floorboards really shiny. Maybe I'll maximize this real quick so you get a better look at it. But you can kind of see that it adds like a little bit of interesting depth to the walls. You can kind of see what's interesting is that like these kind of distress marks on the walls end up being, you know, highlighted as almost crevices in the walls, which is something I don't think that we intended. The other thing that's really interesting is that the floor kind of gets this like glossy appearance to it as the light kind of reflects off of it. So there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do with the lighting in Unity. Whether or not this is the intended effect that we want is, you know, kind of up for debate. The other thing you can kind of tell is that the seams aren't the best. So that's another kind of tricky part about the normal mapping for the environment, is that getting the normals to kind of have this interesting textured approach to them, but also not have the seams could be a little tricky. And a lot of it's probably because I just don't really know what I'm doing quite yet. But it is it's interesting stuff to play with. But yeah, I think for now we're going to not. We're going to not set that tile material just so that that doesn't look too wacky. Another thing I noticed about Sprite Tile too is that I'll often get seams in the preview when working with Sprite Tile. Actually, I don't see them right now. Maybe it's because the preview is bigger. Definitely at the smaller size, we get to see previews, or we get to see seams sometimes. But it actually looks really good when it's built. So maybe we'll build it real quick and just show you what that looks like. Oh, and you might get the music too, I think. And while it's building, we can check in on chat. Yeah, it did look like plastic. It looks like kind of, you know, one of those like faux wooden floorings. All right, so let's test this out. So this is our built executable. And you can see we've got this title screen. Yay! Very simple. And you know, I don't really have it on during the previews, but we actually have background music and everything. And everything kind of looks the same, but you can see how much smoother, or at least, you know, I don't know if you can on the stream, but I can see how much smoother this is and how there's absolutely no tearing whatsoever. beautiful. Although you can see seams here, but that's just because the tile sets that I used was not properly spaced. Anyways, I think that's all for the stream today. Try and limit it to about an hour and a half because that feels like a good time. So I want to thank everybody for joining me once again. Trying to make this a weekly thing on Mondays at 11:30 Pacific time. So don't forget to follow us on Twitch, and check out A Wizard's Lizard on Steam. You can check it out at wizardslizard.com, and you can check out that game. And then please keep following along with our development, and we'll catch you next time.